going live. And let me share my screen. Going live. And let me. Great. So we are connected to the YouTube now. And this is awesome. So we have a lot of friends joining all over the globe. So let me know in the comment section from where are you joining, my friends. It would be really nice to know. You guys also mentioned me in the chat. Perfect. So welcome, my friends. Welcome back to Saudi Arabia, Microsoft Excel Power Platform Meetup. It's one place in finance solution where we connect, share, and learn together. I'm Faraz Sheikh. I'm the host of this meetup and the organizer. And I run my website, Excel Exciting. So just let me quickly tell you about myself, okay? So, about me, I'm an MVP, I'm an MCD, as well as Microsoft Office Master, YouTuber, blogger, and I love about Microsoft Office applications and Excel particularly. I love a lot about that. So, today I'm here with some of my friends, those who you may know or they might be new, but they are the Greeks in Excel and the tech community. So, with them, I come with a passion to share the knowledge and equally to gain the knowledge from them. And so, I have my friend over here from Austria, who is from came here today specially for my meetup online, and I hope someday we bring her in Saudi Arabia as well. So, who will be talking about Excel Uncharted data visualization. So she's going to talk about that, and I will definitely leave the floor for her. And she's joining. We have been planning this meetup from couple longer time, and alhamdulillah, we are able to match it up today. And thank you for your patience. I would appreciate everyone who are joining their patience. And if you know something about Excel and Power Apps, Power Platform, and you'd like to share about that, please feel free to share your knowledge. And you can always write back to me on excelexciting@outlook.com so we can connect and you can come and share your knowledge over here. And just to make sure that you are getting the best experience from this meetup. So if you have any questions, you can just mention Q and you can write it up, and I'll definitely take it to the presenter. And note that this is a live session which is getting recorded, and you can always find the recording on the YouTube link. So I will now leave the floor to my friend Laura, where she will be taking from here onwards. Yes, Laura.
Yes, thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm very thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so glad to be able to talk about Excel, a little bit about me. So my name is Laura. I live currently in Austria, but originally I'm from Hungary. I love Excel. I train Excel. I do consulting. And since approximately 2 months, I also became an Excel MVP, which I'm very, very happy about it. And my favorite topics in Excel are automation and data visualization. So when we talk about data visualization, everyone jumps just straight into dashboards and charts, right? That's the first thing that you think about. And we tend to forget that there is so much more to visualization than just charts. So that's why I picked today's topic to be all about uncharted territory. We're going to dive in and I'm going to show you very cool tips and tricks on how to make cool visualizations without ever leaving the Excel grid or the cells. I hope you have the same workbook as I do. If not, maybe I can drop it in the chat. But I'm going to share my screen now and take you through a few of the examples that I came up with for today. So, okay, it should work now. I hope you'll see my workbook as well.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, thank you. let me just, I think that's fine. So, as I mentioned, we're going to go through some exercises and some examples, and I'm going to show you a few tips on how to make cool visualizations without charts. So if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you have the possibility to do it directly from Excel. And I also put in my LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me or you have any questions after the session, just drop me a message on LinkedIn and I'm really happy to answer all of them. So where do we start in this Excel jungle? Because when we start talking about visualizations, for me, the first step is always the data. And something that I always like to teach about in all of my courses is data tables. I think I have at least 5, if not more, data tables in every workbook that I use. For me, tables are the backbone and one of the coolest features in Excel. The only thing I really don't like about tables is how they look like, right? I think it's very common. If you just put a table into Excel, you have this standard blue design, right? I'm not a huge fan of it because some of the data might get lost. It's not so easy to get insight into the numbers, and it's a little bit overwhelming to look at that big blue table. So the first thing is what I'm always doing is just to change the design. If you scroll to the right, you see that I have it's actually the same data that I have on the left and the right side, but I just changed the visualization of the table. So with just a few tricks, you can actually create really magic and change the total layout of the whole table. So first of all, I just deleted the blue design of the table, and I made sure that only the headers are bold and underlined. In this way, it's much more easier to just understand what's going on in our table and in our data set. The next step is, as you can see, I have a few columns with a few of visualizations. I'm going to go through step by step what I did, but in a few columns, I will talk a little bit more detailed about what I did in there a little bit later. So let me zoom in a little bit. We have a data set, and since we're in the jungle, we are going to discover a few monuments like temples or shrines. And our goal is to find the diamonds at the end of the session. Now, if I scroll down, it's really easy to see, for example, if we go to the place column T, it's really easy to see what kind of place we have in this row. Like we have the different categories: forest, water, underground, or desert. And the cool thing is that I have a visual indicator right next to the text as well. So for me as a user, it's very easy to see what's going on. And I used here one of my favorite tricks that's pretty new, so to say, the picture in cell. So you see next to the text, there is a really small symbol that indicates what kind of place. Is it a mountain or an underground? In the column S, I just put XLOOKUP, which finds, based on the text that it's standing next to it, it finds the corresponding picture and shows it in the table. So I put a helper table on another sheet. Let me show it to you. It's actually hidden. It's on the input tables. So I have a helper table here with the text and the pictures directly in the cells. And then with the help of the XLOOKUP, but you can use index match as well, I just put the corresponding pictures also in the table. I think this is a very easy but great way to visualize data. Now I use the same trick in the danger level as well. Because you see here I have a lot of text and I even have different colors. So you could say that maybe it's conditional formatting, but if you really take a closer look, you will see that not the whole cell has the background color with pink, but just some part of it. and the text has a different font. It's not, I don't think that this font exists in Excel. What I did is the same trick. I used the helper table here that is hidden, and then I put some pictures directly into the cells. So I created these pictures in Canva, I downloaded them, I put them into my Excel sheets, and then I used the XLOOKUP to show it also in this table. So if you haven't used the picture in cell before, you can just click on a cell, then go to the Insert tab, Pictures, Place in Cell, and then you can choose here this device. I downloaded all my pictures into a folder, and I'm directly using them and I'm inserting them from my folder. I think this is easier than using stock images on online pictures because the pictures are saved in the workbook. So you can be sure that there will be nothing happening to the links, nothing will go wrong. So then we have, for example, the status column, and it has also some other symbols or indicators next to it. Now I could have used picture in cell here as well, but I wanted to show you another way to actually have a very similar result. Instead of pictures, I just used symbols. So if you go to this hidden sheet, you will see that I have actually just two different symbols, circle or a square. Circle is for abandoned or ruins, and the square is for hidden temples. And I also used the XLOOKUP to just put the circles and the squares into a very narrow column. Now, the reason why the color is different, because if you zoom a little bit in, you will see that the abandoned and the ruins have different colors. I use conditional formatting. Let me just show you the rule. So I used conditional formatting to change the font color of these symbols. So it says, for example, if the text in the column status is hidden, then the color should be gold. If the text says abandoned, then the color of these circles should be pink. And that's how you can also combine, even if you don't like this picture in cell method, you can also do the same just by using emojis and some conditional formatting together. It has more or less the same result. Now, the next column is the sparklines. So if you haven't used sparklines before, they are basically just mini line charts in the cells. So the only difference between a line chart and the sparklines is that the sparkline is in the cell and not on top of it. If you scroll to the right, you will see that I have the data on the right side. So we have the visitors from January to December. And let me just show you how I inserted it because it's very easy. So the first step is to highlight the data that's on the right side. Then I go to the menu Insert, and you have here the option that says sparklines. If I click on the line, then I have the option to name the range where Excel should put the sparklines in. And if I click on the OK, then Excel puts these mini line charts directly into the cells. Now, what I like to do with sparklines is the following. Let me just make the column a little bit wider. You can change the color to, for example, gray or black. And you can even change, like if you use a normal line chart, it's kind of difficult to highlight the highest or the lowest point. You always need a workaround for that. The great thing about sparklines is that you can easily do it because it's a built-in feature in Excel. So you have, for example, under the button Axis, you have different options, and you can change, for example, the axis type and any kind of thing. Then with the Sparkline core, you can change the color of the line chart. And you have the option under the markup color, for example, to change the highest point to green. Let me do that. And the lowest point to red. Now it's even more visible if the sparkline is gray and not black. I think that's actually the best solution. Let me just change it here. And now it's very visible what are the maximum or the minimum values in that sparkline. And you can easily see the trend within the table. You don't need to create an extra chart for that. So one thing that I really like about table is to kind of combine them with conditional formatting. Because for the users, if I don't want my users to just scroll or use the filter, I can combine drop-downs with conditional formatting to be able to highlight some interesting aspects or some groups or categories in the table. So if you use the drop-down in the category, then you see that all of the lines that have the tag sanctuary in the category will be highlighted. Now, if I also use the drop-down in status, then I see, let me just find a good combination, that only the combination where the sanctuary is in the category and the status is overgrown will be highlighted. I think it's a really great way to give the users a little bit of flexibility to make the tables dynamic so that they can choose what is the aspect that they want to highlight. How did I do this? If you scroll a little bit to the right, you will see there is a filter function. And this filter function actually takes the two drop-downs, and only if they are filled out, so only if I have something filled in both, or at least in one of the drop-downs, then I will have a filtered list of the text of the names that I want to see it. Now you can just copy paste this solution. I think it's very great because if you forget to build in the if function, the problem with the filter is, let me do, for example, category temples. The problem is with the filter is, if we use the filter, so let me say we are filtering the names such that the category should be the same as this drop-down. This works pretty well, but as soon as I delete the category drop-down, I will have an error message with my filter function. So that's why I built in an if function for that in case the drop-down is empty, then I want to see all of the names in the category. So that's really important to notice at this point. And as a second step, after created this array, that's my solution array, I actually created a helper cell too. So let me just unhide these columns. I have here a helper column that just states, let me just choose something within the category. So for example, I choose sanctuaries categories, then the filter function gives me a list of all the names that are filtered. And within the helper column, I just created a function that tells me if this name, for example, the Temple of Some, is in the list or if it's not. So it gives back true if the Temple of Some is in the filtered list, and it gives me the answer false if it's not in the list. After I created this helper column, the last step is actually just to use the conditional formatting and then create a rule that takes into account the helper column. So based on the result in the helper column, I want to highlight the cells that are selected with a gray background. I think this is a great solution to give users more flexibility on what they want to select. And I used a very similar idea here with the green one. So if you go to the first drop down, which is green, and if you select something there, then the whole row will be highlighted as well. Now, the only important thing is that if you have more than one conditional rule on a table or on a list, you have to be careful with the order of the conditional formattings. Because you see, I selected the category sanctuary, so it should be gray. But since I selected it in the green drop-down as well, the number 5 became green as well. How can Excel decide which conditional formatting rule is more important? Should this row be green or should it be gray? If you go to the conditional formatting rules, you will see that actually the green is on top of the gray. So if you have more than one rule, so if, for example, 2, and if Excel cannot show them both simultaneously, then you have the opportunity to change the order. So since green is on the top, I said with that the green is more important to me. If I change the order of this, so let me put gray on top of green, you can change it with these arrows on the right side. Then suddenly I cannot see the green highlights anymore. And that's maybe not something that I want. So just be careful with that and try to think about it, what's more important to show. In my example, I wanted to have a green highlight row, and then on the second layer, a gray one. And also one thing to see is if you have sparklines in your data set, the conditional formatting will still work. It will just override it a little bit. So gray is probably not the best color in this example because it's now I cannot see the sparklines. But if I were to select black sparklines, the data will be much more visible. Good. If there are any questions, just please drop them into the chat. I will make sure that I will answer them latest at the end of the session, but I can also gladly jump back to any previous example that I'm showing you. The next example is very, very exciting. It's the Pareto passage. So I guess you heard about the Pareto principle, which is basically that 20% of your inputs is responsible for 80% of your outputs. And in this case, I wanted to show you how to create a conditional formatting on a table if you want to highlight, for example, the top 10 or top 20% of some data. So we have a data set, breakdown by Lost Explorer. There are several rooms in our temple. And in those rooms, a few of the explorers got lost. Now, I want to make sure that our next group doesn't get lost. So I need some data and I need to be able to see in which rooms how many people got lost. Oh, sorry. So if you use the scroller to the right or to the left, you will see that the highlights will be changed, that the background color of the cell will be changed. And based on how much I scroll to the right, I can highlight the whole table. So I can see, for example, what are the top 20 or top 10 or top 50% of this data. What did I do to create this kind of a visualization? First of all, I inserted the scroller. You can do this under Developer, Insert, and Scroll Bar. Then you can actually link this scroller to a cell. So I linked it to N5 and I made sure that the minimum value is 0 and the maximum is 100. Because we are talking about percentages, this number has to be between 0 and 100. Then the next step was that I calculated the cumulative values. So the original data set is consisting of the first two columns, and the third one is just a running sum, more or less. And the fourth one is just a percentage of the running totals. So in the next step, I have to make sure that, for example, if with the scrollers we have 70%, then I have to make sure that Excel finds this 70% and everything under 70 will be highlighted. And if you unhide a few of the columns, you will see that I have a few helper columns again. And basically, I have here a helper cell for XLOOKUP on the right side that just calculates this helper cell with the 5, just finds that it's actually the 5th position on this list that has a number that's closest to 70%. So if you haven't worked with XLOOKUP very detailed, then there is an extra option that you can change, because we're actually looking for 70%, but 70% is not in our list. But with XLOOKUP, you have the option, it's the second optional argument, the match mode. And with the match mode, you can switch it so that just in case Excel doesn't find the exact match, then I want Excel to jump to the next larger item, which is, in our example, the 74%. So we found the position, it's 5. Everything under the 5th position should be highlighted. I use the helper column with true and false so that Excel can, so that I only have these two different results. And based on this column, based on the true and the false, I created, again, conditional formatting rules that only format those cells where the helper column states that this is true. So in our case, if I change the scroll bar, then the number here will be changed to 95%. Then the XLOOKUP finds the position of that number. Then, as the next step, the helper column, this is here, the helper column will give me the result true or false. And everywhere where I have true, I set up the conditional formatting so that for the true cells, the cells should have a different background color. I think it's a great way to visualize top 20% or top 80% and so on. In our next example, that's kind of similar. If you scroll down, the only difference is that I don't see the whole table, but based on the scroll bar, I only see a few, like the top in our example, for example, those who are within the 80% of the threshold. So the top 7 items. I use a similar idea. So I have here a helper column, which gives me the result true and false. I connected this scroller to a cell here on the right side. Then I use the helper cell and the XLOOKUP to be able to find the position of the cells. And everywhere where the position is smaller than the position from the XLOOKUP, I have the solution as true. And for those true cells, I used here the filter function to only see the cells where the helper column gives me the true answer. And the rest is just conditional formatting again. So I used here the data bars. And the first two cells, like the title more or less, is just helper cells to be able to show the users how many items do I have in that list and within which threshold, which percentage am I currently at. So you can see all of the helper cells on the right side. And if you change the scroll bar, you will see that indeed, actually, the whole list will change, and now I see more from the items. If you go to 100%, you should see all of the items from the first list. Good. Now, to the next sheet. This is one of my favorite trips in Excel, favorite features, is the camera tool. If you haven't used that before, you can actually take screenshots in Excel, and those are dynamic screenshots. The only thing is kind of hidden, so we have to find it first. If you haven't used that before, we have the quick access toolbar left from the name of your workbook, and there is an arrow that points down. If you click with the right mouse on that button, you can go to more commands. And here you have a list of the most popular commands in Excel. On the first drop down, you can go to all commands. And now you have a list of a very, very, very long list of Excel features. And if you go to the camera tool, I already added it to my list, so that's why it's on the right side. But you should see here camera, then you can go to the ads, and then to the OK. And now it should be on the quick access toolbar for you as well. So if you highlight range in Excel and then go to the camera and left click on it, then you can just draw here a line, a little bit of photo, and you created more or less a screenshot. What's so special about the screenshot is actually that it's dynamic. So if I change, for example, the values here, the screenshot will be automatically updated. And what's better, if I change, for example, the layout or something, the screenshot will be updated as well. This is very, I think it's a super cool feature if you work with dashboards, because you surely know that if you have a table or a list, those are directly in the cell. But if you create a dashboard or something, objects, and those are actually on top of the cells as a layer. So if I have here a picture, now I cannot see the cells anymore. And the camera tool is a great workaround on how to show values that are in the cells on top of objects. And I will talk about this idea later. But as you can see, if I change anything in those cells, the screenshot, this camera tool will be automatically updated. I think this is a really great tool. So going back, because we still have a lot to cover, let me change to the next one, because I already talked about sparklines. Just to quickly go back, we had the sparklines in the first sheet, that was the tables. And I mentioned that these are like more or less mini line charts directly put into the cells. Now we can create those fake charts, and they don't have to be line charts as well. So we have the option to create bar charts and column charts directly in or from the cells. This we can do with the wrapped function, which is actually, let me just zoom in a little bit. The wrapped function repeats a certain symbol or an icon or an emoji a couple of times, depending on the user input. So you see we have a few of the reptilians, we have the sightings, and I want to show the difference between these numbers. Now I have the two options on how to do this. Either I use the wrapped function, and I used here a line. So instead of a text, I can use a symbol or an emoji. I just used a line. The only trick that you need to know about the wrapped function is if you do use this line, for example, that the result will look like this. 5 lines just next to each other. This is not looking it's not really like a data bar. But if you change the font type to playbill, which I did here in this cell, so you see the font is playbill, then those lines will look like a normal data bar. Very different, right? And if you compare these two options, the wrap function or the conditional formatting data bar, you really can see a huge difference. So in the second solution, I used conditional formatting data bar, and here I selected black. The results, they look very similar. The only difference is that if you want to, for example, highlight the highest and the lowest point, it's much easier to do that with the wrap function. Because with the conditional formatting, the problem will be you can't really tell Excel, oh, make the highest data bar green and the lowest red. With the conditional formatting, you can't do that. With the wrap function, you can. Because the wrap function is actually in the cell, you can just use a conditional formatting that's, for example, highlights the top one item. And if you go to the rules, you will see that that's exactly what I did. So the formula is find the minimum of this data set and make the font color red. And then I did the same with the maximum for green. And that's why here the highest data bar is green and the lowest is red. It's a very simple solution, but much better than the conditional formatting. The only thing about the wrap function is if you also want to see the value directly in the same cell, and if you use the playbill font type, it's not going to look great. You see here the numbers, they are not really, I think they are not the nicest, so to say. If you use conditional formatting, the numbers are much easier to read. What you can do is I would just use the wrap function and just leave the numbers on the left side in a separate cell, in a separate column, so you don't have this problem. And the great thing about the wrap function is, if you scroll down a little bit, it's very versatile. Like you can use it with any kind of emoji or text or symbol, it will still look great. I prepared a few of the examples. So for example, here I used the minus sign, and then in the end, if it's the maximum, a triangle that's completely filled out. And if it's not a maximum of the data set, then just a normal triangle, which is only outlined. And then I combine this solution with the conditional formatting that just states, okay, the maximum should be green and the lowest should be red. You can create lollipop charts directly in the cells with this wrap function. I used here, again, the minus symbol. And in the end, I also inserted a circle. So based on what you want to show and how you want to show, this wrap function gives you the flexibility to show your data however you want. And there are so many options. I think it's a really great function. If you scroll down a little bit, you see that we don't have data bars anymore, but columns. So this actually looks like a column chart in Excel. But I created this again with the wrapped function. So you see we have the 4 reptilians and the 4 column charts, but these are actually in the cells. The only trick is, let me just quickly show you how it's done. If I use the wrapped function, let me say, repeat that 10 times, then change it to playbill. So this one is still horizontal, right? It goes from the left to the right. How do I make it that it looks like a column? If you go to, I think the easiest if you right click on the cell, then you have the option format cells. And here under alignment, you can actually change the orientation of the cell. And if you put it to 90 degrees, then the text will, the text will be changed. And then you can center the alignment, make the row a little bit higher, and then it will look like more or less like a column chart. So actually, the important settings are, let me just highlight it on my screen. First, I changed the alignment to 90 degrees. That was the first step here under alignment. And then I changed the alignment here, centered, and then to the bottom part of the cell. And then the cell really looks like a bar chart in a column chart in the cell. I think it's a great trick. I haven't seen it very often in Excel, but this looks like the same as a column chart. If we go down a little bit, that's our last example for the wrapped function. I created here two possible solutions. So as I mentioned, you can use any kind of characters or emojis in the wrapped function. Either you can use the emojis from Windows. So if you use the shortcut Windows and dot, then there will be a pop-up and you can directly insert emojis into your worksheet. The only thing that I find is such a shame that if you insert an emoji, it won't have any color in the cells. So you see, I inserted, for example, the diamond and the heart, and they don't have colors in the cell. As soon as you use them in charts, they will show their colors, but not in the cells. However, it's still possible to insert, for example, circles and use these circles in the wrapped function. Or you can also use the characters within functions. For example, the unichar function will give you, based on several numbers, I have here 3 different squares. So whatever you prefer, either directly put the emojis directly into the sheets, into the cells, or just use the unichar function to show them. And in this example, I have numbers from 1 to 5. So I created a function that kind of calculates how many, what are the numbers here. And based on the numbers, in this first example, the full circle will be 1 and the rest will be empty circles. If I have a decimal point, then there will be like a half circle as well. And the sum should be always 5. So this is just like a function, but you can directly put the wrapped in it and here create more or less a fake chart for you. So you can insert a fake bar chart, a fake column chart, or line chart for sparklines, or even any kind of special visualizations that you can just come up with. The only thing is, how do we make sure that these charts, this data, these fake charts are shown on a dashboard? Because maybe we do want to show all of this on the dashboard. If you go to the right, you will see that I have here more or less an empty dashboard. Still, 2 of my fake charts are on the dashboard. It's because I use the camera tool. So let me just go back. So for example, I can select this range, use the camera tool, and then put this screenshot directly on top of the dashboard. The great thing is, even if the data changes, or even if I change something in the formatting, I will see it on the dashboard because the camera tool is dynamic. So it's a super cool and flexible solution to showcase even the fake data on top of the dashboard. Cool. Then Hall of Scrolls. I have to make sure that we have time for all of the examples. So I will be a little bit faster, but if you have any questions, just let me know and I can answer them gladly in the end. If we have a very huge table and we don't want the users to just scroll down and down and down, then there is the option to create, so to say, a mini scrollable table. So if you try it out, on the right side, I have a scroller. And based on how you scroll down or up, I can see that the table next to it really changes. So how did I create this solution? Because we have the big data table here, and I don't want the users to scroll down all the time. So I created, I use offset actually pretty often. I think it's a very cool function. I used the offset function and I linked this scroller. So that's always kind of the first step. I inserted this scroller, then I linked it to this cell, this helper cell. And based on the helper cell, based on this number 55, I told Excel with the offset function, go to the start, which is the first line in our data table, then go down 55 rows based on this scroller helper cell, and then take the next 5 rows and 11 columns because we have 11 columns in this table. In this way, I made sure that here in this range, I always see the 11 columns and only 5 rows. If you want to take it to the next level, you can even create a drop-down. And in those drop-down, I actually have the headers from the table. And based on what you select here, the sort, the function, with the help of the sort function, this data in this scrollable table will be sorted differently. So for example, if I select here chamber, then the whole data set will be sorted based on the first column. If I say, okay, let's pick up the danger type, then the whole data set will be sorted on the 8 or so column. This is with the sort function. So it's a very cool, dynamic, and interactive way to be able to just kind of see a fraction of this whole data table. And again, if you want to see this on top of the dashboard, so for example, on top of a rectangle or on top of an object, you can use the camera tool, take a snapshot, and then just place this camera, this screenshot on top of an object. And this is what I did in the second example. Going to the next example, waffle charts. I love waffle charts because I really don't like to use pie charts, and waffle charts offer a great solution because they can show you the different portions of a data set. So in this example, we have 3 different explorer groups, and they discovered gold, skeletons, and jewels. If I want to showcase a part of a whole, then the waffle chart is a great option for that. I'm going to show you how it works, and in the beginning, I will show you actually the results, and then I will quickly go through the calculation and what I did in the background. If you use this drop-down and you select another group, you will see that the waffle chart will completely change. And based on the group, one thing that I really like about this solution is that it's completely interactive and dynamic. And I see that Excel kind of crashed because I can't select the drop-down anymore. So let me just manually change this. This happens sometimes. So you see that based on the group, it's always the biggest group that is on the bottom of the waffle chart. And then we have the second category is the gold, and the third one is the skeletons. So I wanted to create a solution where the biggest category is always on the bottom of the waffle chart, And then it's really sorted the same way. So the middle should be in the middle, and the smallest group should be above the two. And the second thing that I did, what I think is very important, is to make sure that the titles or the descriptions are next to their corresponding groups. So the jewels should be pink, should be next to the pink group, and the title and description should be here, always aligned. And even if you change the drop down, now it works, to another one, it's always the same. The colors and the categories should match, and the biggest group should be on the bottom of the waffle chart. That was my aim with that. Now, how did I create this solution? Let me show you what I did here. I'm going to make the columns a little bit more wide. And actually, in these cells where you see the colors, this waffle charts, there are numbers in it. So if you change the formatting from custom to general, and let me make it all black, but I think I have a conditional formatting, you will see that there are actually numbers in those cells. And based on those numbers, I created conditional formatting rules that make those cells, for example, pink, if the number is between 200 and 300, blue, if they are between 100 and 200, and yellow or gold, if they are between 100 and between 0 and 100. Now, the first step is to kind of calculate or figure out how do I know how many numbers I want to have here. We have these groups, and now I selected the moon watchers, and you can see that for gold I have 0.5, for the skeleton 0.4, and for the jewels 10% of the whole part. Now I have to make sure that since I have here 100 cells, 10 times 10, 100, I have to make sure that from those 100 cells, half of them are gold, like 50%, 40% are skeletons are blue, and 10% are pink. So I created, with the help of the sequence function, I created sequence that places numbers between 0 and 100, that's for the gold conditional rule. So between 0 and 100, we want to have 50%, like 50 cells. Then for the next category, which is the skeletons, numbers between 100 and 200, I want 40 of them. And for the last category, which is the pink category for the jewels, I want 10 of these numbers. So I did that with the help of the sequence function. And then if I have those numbers, I can actually use the stack functions, the vstack, to kind of put them into the right cells and make sure that they are 10 by 10. And as a last step, I need to make sure that that they are sorted in the right order, because we want the biggest group to be on the bottom. So I have to make sure that I sort them from lowest to biggest number. And if you do that, then with the help of the conditional formatting, you can create a fully dynamic and interactive waffle chart. The only challenge would be probably to get the description or the titles to the corresponding order. Now, I've seen this solution actually made with Python in Excel, but I definitely wanted to create a solution with dynamic arrays without Python, because I'm not really great at Python. So what I did here is actually just an array that finds the maximum of these colors, more or less. Since we know that the gold is between 0 and 100, blue is 100, 200, and pink is 200 and 300, we can find the position of the maximum of the values for each of the colors. And then I have to make sure that even in the case that 2 or more are in the same line, I think that's for this case exactly, So if you see, if two colors would be in the same line, if two titles would be in the same line, I have to make sure that one of them is actually in the line above it. And that's why I have to make like this step in between that kind of calculates, that takes into account if I have more than one category in the same line, then one should be in the above line. I'm not going to go into the details here, but if you have any questions to this one, then let me know, because this is quite technical. So maybe just a few more examples. Cell sanctum, cell picture in cell. This is absolutely one of my favorite features in Excel. And if you're doing anything regarding data visualizations and dashboards, this is truly a game changer. I've shown a very small example in the tables, and we're going to talk about it now a little bit more detailed. So if you go to the first table, you will see that I have more or less what resembles a KPI card in Excel. Now I know in Power BI it's very easy to create a KPI card because we already have a built-in function for that. In Excel, we do need to do a few of workarounds. So if I insert a few of the shapes, for example, a rectangle, I can layer even more on top of each other, then insert a text box. I can actually create what looks like a KPI card. So let me do just that. Now I used a different color, but I can insert a text box here, and I can link this text box directly to a cell. So if I go to the formula bar, type in is equal, and I click on a cell, for example, this one, then I say enter, then I will see the result, what I actually see on the cell. Even if I change the cell, this text box will be automatically updated. And that's actually a great tip on how to display text in a dynamic way on top of pictures or any other objects. That's how I created the left side of this KPI card. I had some helper cells here on these sides, and I made sure that the helper cells are linked to the text box. Now, to take it to the next level, you can do the same, but with pictures. So in our table, we have two different columns, and they both have pictures in those columns. So I have the pictures of the animals, and I have circles for the background. Those are all pictures that are directly saved into the cell. Now, I created here a drop-down, and with the help of XLOOKUP, I actually created a helper cell that gives me the picture of the selected animal. So if you change the drop-down, for example, to slot or jagger, you will see that the helper cell will be changed, but that picture is kind of small. How do I display this on top of the KPI, on top of the other objects? If you have a picture in cell, even if it's from an XLOOKUP, even if it's from a function, you can right-click to the cell, then go to Picture in Cell and create reference. Now the picture will be much bigger, but since the picture is linked to the cell is linked with XLOOKUP to the whole column and to actually this drop-down. If I select some other animal in the drop-down, the picture will be changed in the cell, and the reference, the big picture, will be changed as well. If you use dashboards, I think this is a great way to make dashboards a little bit more colorful, more fun, and much more visual. So let me just delete this, and then let's go down. In the next example, I used a very similar way. The only difference is that the favorite food of this animal is now displayed as a picture as well. So you see in the second column, instead of just a plain text, I have a much nicer way to display the foods. I used here again the helper table. So if we go to the input tables, which is hidden, this is a hidden sheet, you will see that I have a helper table with the text from fruits and the pictures right next to it. And these 4 cells are actually pictures that I created in Canva. I download them and I put them directly into the Excel. So even if you wanted to change the text, you couldn't, because these are normal pictures. And I linked these pictures to this table. And I use the same trick, picture in cell with the XLOOKUP, to be able to display these on the KPI card. Now, the only thing is, I also inserted another column that kind of states if a species are endangered or not. So if you activate the checkbox, for example, for the era parrot, okay, for some reason this doesn't want to work. To update, it seems like I have to update this a little bit. Yeah, now it's working. So you see that now I selected the jaguar and the checkbox is activated or not. And based on if I activate the checkbox or not, the KPI card will be different. So if it's endangered, if the jaguar is in danger, then this KPI card will have a red outline and the background of the jaguar will be red as well. This is a very good visual indicator to display that something is not right, something is wrong. Please have attention. So what I did is actually just a couple of functions. I said, okay, if the checkbox is activated, then I want to see another background that is red. This is here on the right side in the helper cell. And I also created more or less a helper rectangle that is actually behind the white one. And only if the checkbox is activated, the right one will be shown as well. This is this cell. So it states if the checkbox is true, if it's activated, then I want the red rectangle to be shown. And if it's not, and that's very important, I want another picture. Because if you have a function that results in a picture, and that function is not working, or if it's an if function, and if the if function jumps to false and you don't have a picture for false, you will see an error message. So what I did here is more or less a workaround, because I put a transparent picture for the false. So even if the checkbox is not selected, the picture won't give me an error message. It will be just transparent. So it will be invisible for us. It's a little bit of a workaround, but I think it's a really great way to visualize or to make these KPI cards even more interactive. And if you want to take this to the next level, instead of using drop downs, because these are in the cell, you can connect pictures and tables to slicers. So in the next example, if you select here on the slicer another animal, the picture will be shown as well. I connected the slicer to the table directly. Then with the help of the XLOOKUP, I also have a helper column, which uses the subtotal. So the subtotal gives me the result 1 if here the row is visible, and 0 for all the not visible cells. And with the help of the XLOOKUP, I just said, okay, let's find the only animal that is not filtered out, that is still visible in our table. Then I created the reference with the right-click picture in cell, create reference. And based on the slicer, the reference picture will be changed as well. So this is a great way to use pictures in cells on top of the dashboards or in the dashboards and to connect them to slicers as well. The last example is that for the cell in picture is actually very similar. I just used here more numbers. So you can see that basically it's the same as the previous one, but the numbers will be changed as well. So if we want to compare two numbers, for example, this week's versus last week, and I want to visually kind of highlight if the change is positive or negative, I can use green or red indicators to showcase if the change is positive or negative. Now I use two pictures for this, and I put those pictures into the cells. Here again, the picture in cell idea, and I just use an if function, which states, okay, if the change is positive, then I want to see the green sign. If the number is less than 0, then I want to see the red sign. And these red and green signs are actually pictures that are saved in the cell. So if you create a reference from the results again, and you put it on top of the KPI card, then it's a great way to showcase and to show the users very fast if the change was positive or negative. Now, since we're a little bit over the time, let me just go maybe, yeah, it's a great question. What happens if you select two animals in the slicer? Yeah. The problem is if I select two, it doesn't show both of the animals. So either you can kind of change the functions or have something that's better than my solution, because for now, since we can only select, the user should only select one of the animals. If two are selected, I think the best solution would be actually to write a function that calculates how many animals are selected. So I would even go and maybe do a text join on a filter that says animal name is selected, filter animal name where helper is 1, and maybe to make it even better, something like this. So I have a typo. Oh, yeah. So array, nice. Yes, something like this would have been better. So if you have more than one animal selected, maybe you can use the text join function to have all of them displayed in the same cell. The only thing that you have to be careful is that if you connect this text box to this cell, then you have to make sure that you have enough room for the text box. Because in this case, let me change this cell to the new one where both of the animals are shown. Now this might be too long and the text will be, you see, if the text is too big, I can't see everything that I have just written down. So if you kind of change the design a little bit, for example, leave more space here, and then put the text a little bit down or even delete it, then you can make sure that the user can read all of the text. So in this case, you can select more than one animals. You can do the same with the fruits, the favorite food as well. But the user still shouldn't select maybe all of them. So I think the best and the easiest solution is just to write something like a hint here in the text box, please select one animal. That would be the best. I know not all of the users do that, so make sure that you have a solution that is even more dynamic. But it's always good to think about what could go wrong if the user doesn't follow my idea. Good. Then let's jump to the next one. The heat maps. One of my favorite topics is creating heat maps in Excel, because this is not a solution that is very well known, but I think it's so easy and such a great indicator that I really love this idea. If you want to show patterns in a data, then it's a super easy solution for your users, because they don't have to look at the numbers, right? So we have the numbers from January to December. If I want to see any kind of patterns or to understand what's going on, I can do that with numbers. I have no idea if there are any trends here in the data. If I use a heat map for that, it's really easy to see, okay, June and August, June, July, August are very heavy, rainy months. Now, how can you create heat maps? Actually, in these cells, I still have numbers. I just kind of let them disappear. So if you select this cell U7, then you see that I use the indirect function. And based on these two drop-downs, where you can select the end and the start, if I select another one, then the indirect function will kind of spell differently and will only show the months between January and July. Then the second step was that I created the conditional formatting, and I used here the option color scale. And if you go to the manage rules, you'll see that the color scale that I used is going from white to dark blue. And the only thing that you need to be careful is that the numbers are still in the cells. So let me just change the formatting, and you see the numbers are still there. If you just want these visualizations without the numbers, then you can select the whole range, go to the formatting, more number formats, and under the custom, if you use actually Excel in English, then you can type 3 times the comma. I'm on a German computer, so I have to use another one for that. And in this way, I just let the numbers disappear from the cells. So they are still inside the cells because they're important for the conditional formatting. You can just not see them anymore. And I think this is very easy on the eyes. Now I can really see what's going on without the numbers. To make it more modern or better looking, these heat maps, let me show you 2 tricks. The second heat map or rain map is very similar. The only difference is that here there is much more white space. So I think this solution is much easier on the eyes. It's more visible to see the differences, and I think it's just plain better looking. So what I did here is the following. Actually, you can click on this second heat map with the left mouse, and you see that this is a picture that has been cut out on several spaces. So if we move this to the left side, you'll see that this heat map is more or less the same as above. And I created a helper range on the left side that replaces all of the numbers that are here. So we still have the numbers in the cell. I just let them disappear with this trick with the custom formatting. So on the left side, I replaced all of the numbers with cubes. Now, the second step was that, let me just change the color of these cubes to red so that we can see what's happening. And I use the camera tool to take a dynamic screenshot of these cubes. The last step is actually the tricky part, because if you layer this on top of the old heat map, you will see, okay, but I cannot really see the heat maps anymore. All I see are the red cubes. What do I need to do next? You can go to the picture format, then go to the color, and here you have the option to set a transparent color. And now you have to click on one of the red cubes with the left mouse, and now actually Excel set all of the red colors that were red before to transparent. So Excel cut out of this dynamic of this picture the red ones, and now you can see what's behind it. Behind this picture there was the heat map with the colors, with those ranges, with the dark or light blue, and now I can see really the whole heat map, but with this nice layout, this nice modern look. Just a small hint to this solution. I think for the cubes, it's better, the best is if you use a very, very light gray, because if I make this screenshot a little bit bigger, you'll see that more or less there are still places where you can see a hint of the red color. That's because of the shadows, so you can still see a little bit of the color. But if we select the color, if I choose the light gray for the cubes, and then I make the light gray transparent again, then those lines are much more or less invisible. So you see almost no line. It looks very neat, very simple, very modern. I really love this solution. And the third heat map is, I think that's more or less the last example, because we're way over the time. So the last example is a combination of more things that I've shown you today. It's also a heat map. Now I have random numbers between 10 and 100 in these cubes. So again, I have numbers in the cells. I use the custom formatting to let those numbers more or less disappear. On the right side, I summed up the numbers from the weeks. So for example, in September, the first week, the sum is on the right side, here and here. Then I used here conditional formatting and the data bar to just show those data bars in the cells. But on the downside, on the bottom part of this calendar, you can also see the sum for the days. So for example, for Monday, now shown in pink, you have the sum in the first column. And for the first week in September, you go horizontally and you also see the sum. So if there's any pattern in the numbers, it's really easy to see, okay, maybe on Mondays there is more rain, or maybe it's always the third week or always the fifth week. It's a really easy solution. On the right side, I use the conditional formatting in the data bar. And on the bottom part, I use the wrapped function, which summed up the values from these cells. And I had to make sure that I changed the alignment again to 90 degrees here from the text, and also change here the alignment. So to make sure that the data bars, these fake data bars, grow from the upper side of the cell to the downside of the cell. And in this way, even if the numbers change, I can always see the pattern, always see if there are 1 or 2 days that have heavy rains, or if there is some kind of pattern in the first to fifth weeks. This is just one way, but you can see, even if we talk about heat maps, there are many, many ways to showcase and to show your data from the cells without using any charts. Yeah, so I think I've shown a lot of examples and we're a little bit over time. So from my side, I would say that that was more or less it. Thank you for being here. And if you still have any more questions, we will stay. And I'm happy to receive any questions on the chat or just let me know later on LinkedIn if you have any thoughts on it or any questions. Happy to hear it. And I hope that after today, you also see that Excel and data visualization is not only about charts, but we can do great and fun things directly from cells as well. So thank you again. Yeah, and I will give it back to you, Faraz.
Well, that was really awesome. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen because you were showing some tricks. They were really awesome, especially the last one, how you have neatly made the blocks. That was really interesting. Yeah, in fact, see, Claudia is also saying it was a great presentation by Jeet. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. And so before we end our meetup session on the YouTube, I just wanted to ask you, Laura, if you have any last words to say your friends, any kind of a quote or anything. It could be a quote, inspirational quote. It could be anything, you'd like to say to our YouTube friends before we go offline from the YouTube.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, no, just to sum it up, I think Excel, because people say that if you work in data visualizations, you should go to Power BI or Tableau. I still think that Excel is a great tool. You just have to know your way around it. There are workarounds, there are great solutions, and I really believe that everything is possible in Excel. Yeah, it's a great database tool. Even if you go and if you work with cells, it doesn't have to be charts. We have so many opportunities. We just have to make the best out of it.
Awesome. That was lovely, Laura. That was really lovely. So, my friends, we are going to sign off now from YouTube, but we're still going to stay back on Zoom because the party is still on. And just make sure that you register for the meetup. So, the next meetup you will come to know it will be in October. And also, there will be in-person meetup which will be happening in Saudi Arabia. So, make sure to join the meetup group and you will definitely get the notifications for the upcoming meetup. Till then, take care. Bye from YouTube. See you soon. Happy learning.
Yeah, I see a question. Is the sorting doing it to resolve the offset or sorting the original data and then offsetting the numbers from the helper cell?